Hi everyone, NFI Hammer here. In this video, me as a beginner is going to build, prime, paint and base a Skorpekh Lord. Let's get started. This is a Skorpekh Lord I managed to get for $4 dues or $4 Australian dollars, and I did a whole video about how you can get some really amazing Necron models for dirt cheap. So check that out if you haven't already. But this is in the magazine that it came from. This is issue 50 of the Imperium Warhammer magazine. And it comes with some other amazing models, so check out those videos if you haven't seen them. So when we get started with the building of this model, it's pretty straightforward, though the 3 arms and 3 legs are a little bit fiddly. But it is one of the push pin models, so they're fairly easy to assemble and you don't need any paint, just you need a hobby knife and some clippers and you're good to go. This one was a little bit fiddly compared to the Crypto Thrall and the Reanimator that I did. I think there's just so many details jam-packed into such a small model that it's kind of, a little bit difficult to line up some of the tubing and the arms correctly, but overall it was pretty straightforward. With the priming, I used a flat black primer from Bunnings. This is about $17 and this is the finished product that you can see here. And then the first color paint I'm using is Runelord Brass. So I'm doing the Shuriken Dynasty theme here, which is the one that you see on the box art. It's pretty straightforward. I do put my own little spin to it, but it's pretty much the exact one, and I think as a beginner it's good to use a template and have a already designed color scheme. But if you're more artistic and creative than me and you can envision a different one, then obviously you're amazing and you should totally keep doing that. But for me, I kind of need a bit of a guide just to set me on the right track. I've also got like a color scheme in my head so that different elements of the body, different types of metals are painted differently, like different colors, and that just kind of helps me make the model consistent within the universe. So for example, here I'm using Rhinox hide. So this is a dark brown color that I use, and I paint this on the toughest metal that the Necron has, so any kind of feet, and in this case I've also painted the claws on his left hand the same color, and it's just to signify that this is like a really indestructible type of metal, whereas the brass is more of an armor plating. Then I've got Runefang Steel, so this I use as sort of a decorative color. So for not like the Lords, they use gold, but for sort of the one step below the Lords, I use a silver color to kind of signify that they are important to the Necron dynasty, but they're not royalty, but they're not your common foot soldiers. And then Leadbelcher is the darker silver, so I use this to signify connecting metal. So things like tubing, internal systems, and some of the armor weapon things. So it's not as tough as the brass, certainly not as tough as the Rhinox hide, and it's not an expensive material, so it's used for weaponry and that sort of equipment. And then I'm starting off with Moot Green, which I use to represent the Gore's energy. So I'm just painting in the blade here, and I'm trying to leave the groove black from the primer so that you can see those cool designs, and just painting all the tubing as well as some of the energy packs or circles in the model. So I was kind of not going too detailed because I can come back later and touch it up, but I'm just trying to get good coverage, and there's some scarab beetles at the bottom that I was getting as well. So gold is, the sigils in the middle of the chest, so I'm just painting that gold. I think it came out really well in this model. There's also a couple of circles that I guess you could paint green, but I was trying to kind of bring a bit more different color. So I think that with my models I've seen in the past, I've used gemstones to signify, you know, wealth and rank. So I thought by painting this gem in his sporran, as I would call it, as a Scottish person, but by painting that blue kind of helps give a bit more visual interest to the model, as well as kind of signify that it is an expensive piece of jewelry. However, you know, you could definitely paint it green and it would make sense as well for that to be like a Gorz energy. Likewise, the power circles on his armor, again you could paint green, but I'm painting red as a gemstone. This to me just kind of gives it a little bit more interesting color. But you can see there on his kind of Thanos gauntlet on the left that they're green, so honestly either way I think it would look fine, but I just like to add a little splash of color just to kind of make it a little bit more interesting. I'm also using my slightly more expensive brushes just to kind of delicately get the paint in there. You know, it's very easy to come back later and touch this stuff up, but it's a lot easier to just not make the mistake in the first place. But it takes time to build up the brush control, and I've still got a long way to go, but I'm definitely getting a little bit better and not getting paint in places that I'm not trying to avoid. You can see as well that the back here isn't glued together and there's a little bit of a gap. I had to take a step away because this bird decided to crash into my window and start a fight with my cat Artemis. So I had to go try and rescue it, which was a little bit of a distraction from my painting. Once the bird had been rescued, it was back to doing the base because I thought this would take some time to dry. So I'm using Martian iron crust here, and I'm just using a toothpick to kind of just spread it out amongst the base and trying not to get too much onto the base where there's some rocks and some scarabs in there, and just try and create some texture. Once the base had dried the next morning, I got some storm vermin fur and I just kind of went over and painted the base. The red color kind of shows through a little bit, so you might need to do a coat or two. Once that's done, then I wanted to paint the rocks Rakarth flesh. So there's some rocks that the Skorpekh Lord is standing on, so they're kind of like ruined buildings. So I thought this is usually the color I use for skulls, but I thought maybe here it might work for ruined buildings as well. I wanted something different than the storm vermin fur because it's clearly, you know, foreign material. It's not dirt that just happened to naturally form this way, so we'll see how it looks. I have a little bit of this Seraphim sepia shade. I used a lot of it on my ruined terrain video, and I'm just applying it here, but because it's at the very end of the bottle, the color that comes out is very varied. So I'm just applying a coat and just trying to spread it all over, kind of just staining the Rakarth flesh colored things to make it look a bit more weathered and ruined. Then I'm using Phoenician purple and T'Challa lilac, so I'm applying the dark purple first as a dry brush. I probably got a little bit too much on my brush here, so I'm getting some on the flat areas where I was really just trying to kind of get the tips of the raised beveled edges, and it's a bit tricky to work with the big model in the way, but just trying to get some interesting color. And then with the T'Challa lilac, I'm really just trying to hit the very edges of the raised areas, so that way it's kind of like the light reflecting off the peaks. It's an interesting approach. It's not very evenly applied, but I do think that it kind of gives an alien quality to the landscape. To help cement that alien look, I'm using alien turquoise grass from Gamer Grass. So I'm just dolloping some PVA glue and made a big mess. by dragging it along, so I put a long strip of grass to kind of cover up some of my mistake, and I was a bit more careful the second time. So I'm just putting another dollop there, and I ended up putting 3 on here because he is such a big, impressive model. I thought, you know, it kind of looks like he's taking up a lot of different area. Then I'm back to the Leadbelcher now to do some touch-ups, and also there's some metal spikes popping out of the terrain, as well as the scarab beetles. I'm just kind of going over those on the ground. They're really cool and unique detail, I think Games Workshop does. I'm also trying to do like a little bit of edge highlighting of the Rhinox hide with this silver. And I've also decided to do something completely different that I haven't done before and paint kind of the spine vertebrae with Leadbelcher. I just felt like there's too much black in the back, so I haven't done this before. I'm not sure if I'll continue to do it, but I just thought it kind of gives him a bit more of a mechanized look, and it's just good to break up the black from being this big blob. Now it's shading time, the best tool of all beginners. So I've just got Agrax Earthshade, which is this brown shade color, and I apply that over all of the Runelord brass. I find that this kind of gives it a bit more of a weathered, like living metal look, which is what the Necrons are known for. And then for the silver areas, mainly the Leadbelcher silver, I'm using Maln Oil, which is a black shade. I'm also putting it in the gold sigil in the chest area. And yeah, just in the grooves of the weapons. Then with Avaland Sunset, I just noticed that the blade here was kind of a bit boring. It's just that one green color. I did try wet blending with the Scorpec Destroyers, and it didn't really work very well. You can check out that video here if you're interested. So I just thought in this case I might just put a little bit of yellow edge highlighting. So this is the finished product. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I think it looks very terrifying, very intimidating. I like the base that it's on. I think it looks really professional and cool for a beginner who's only been in this hobby for 9 months. I am, definitely getting quicker at doing a lot of the painting because I think I'm not making as many mistakes and having to go back and fix them up. And I'm also just getting more comfortable with the color scheme. Now painting, a little bit over 1,000 points of 10th edition Necron army, that I'm kind of a bit more familiar with what I'm up to. I think, this is definitely one of my favorite models so far. I think Games Workshop has really done an amazing job. And as I said, for $4 for this model is just absolutely insane value. If you've made it this far in the video, I'd really appreciate if you can leave a like, comment, or subscribe. It's the best kindness that you can give any YouTube content creator, and it definitely would help me out a lot. If you want to see more of these videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you'll get informed when the next video drops. And thanks for watching, and see you next time. Bye.